Well, it's the episode many of you have been waiting for. On today's Locked On Predators, we're going to explain why Andrew Brunette needs to be fired.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Thursday or Friday Junior, as we call it, episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support. We love talking through this crazy season altogether. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Emma, we have talked a lot this season about all of the different issues the Nashville Predators have faced. We've had conversations about the future of head coach Andrew Brunette. And even when there were loud public cries of fire Bruno during stretches of the season, we've kind of preached a measured response, caution when it comes to something like a head coaching change. Friends, today is a new day. One of us is going to say the quiet part out loud and lay out why she thinks Andrew Brunette should not be the coach of the Nashville Predators. Ooh, it's going to get spicy here, y'all, today. Before we dive into this juicy topic, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Oh, Emma, we have talked about it all. We have talked about line construction, roster construction, chemistry, underperforming veterans, giving young players time to go, shooting percentage. We've talked about the hate from the hockey gods. We've also talked about the coaching decisions. And previously over the course of the season, we have kind of preached, both of us, a measured approach. Give it time. We have expressed some concerns with some of the things with Andrew Brunette, one of them being like, a little short leash for some of these younger players. We've talked about the system and, you got to coach the players you have, not the players you wish you had. We've talked about the fact that, look, this is a guy who's been a Jack Adams finalist who last season was finished second in the voting for best coach of the year, hired by a general manager who, by the way, already had a coach. So we've talked about all of this, but today is a new day. Emma, take the floor.
All right. I'm officially jumping on the fire Andrew Brunette train. However, with some stipulations.
Okay.
Number one, I don't think he should be fired right now. Firing him now gets you nothing. This is not a playoff team. No good comes from this. I would say the only reason you fire him now is if there was a culture problem, which I don't believe there is. And that brings me to my second stipulation, is that Andrew Brunette, not a bad coach, and he's not a bad person. He has not lost the locker room. He is not causing some kind of wholesale culture shift or culture problem in this room. He has not lost the respect of his players. It's nothing like that. Number 3, this is a situation that I think is purely about the on-ice product. This is not off the ice related. Like I said, Brunette, not a bad coach. He connects with his players. Players like him. But at this point, and we know, like you said, we have taken a very measured approach to this with let's pump the brakes. Let's give it time, give him some patience. And for the record, I am not completely reversing my stance on this issue, because what I always said was that with what he did with this team last year, he earned another full season.
Right.
after that. So,
Yes.
which I think he should still get. I think he should finish out this season, but I think that you need to have some tough conversations when this season is over. I think this is about on ice and about his system. You hear us talk about it a lot.
Mhm.
It's very unique, it's very fast, it's different, it's forward thinking. It is not an inherently objectively bad system. It's not wrong. It can work. It has worked in places like Florida, uh,
Mhm.
example, and it can work with the right pieces, but it's clearly not working. And again, measured approach. I'm like, exhaust all the options before you immediately start blaming the coach. And I kind of feel like we're getting to that point now because you have all these players on your roster. You have future Hall of Famers on your roster, and they look awful. And I think that a lot of it just has to do with the system. And again, not saying that it's inherently wrong or bad, but it's just not right for this group of players. And if you're Barry Trotz, you have to take a step back and look at what you've assembled here and say, okay, I have this coach who preaches this system. I have all these players that I've signed to multi-year contracts to kind of build this winning culture here. At the end of the day, it's gonna be if you're trying to be competitive sooner rather than later, the way to do that is by replacing the coach because it's gonna be a lot quicker, a lot faster to replace the coach rather than replacing an entire team of these guys that you've assembled. And I think that, I'm not quite there yet on like, "Oh, they need to go hire this guy." I don't know. I haven't
Mhm.
I'm not fully haven't fully baked this thought out, but I do think I have reached the point where I'm saying, "Okay, you really have exhausted just about every other option at this point." And when you have a roster full of guys who are underperforming individually as well as a team, and it's not just about the results, it's not just the numbers. I mean, even
Right.
the eye test, these guys look like they just look like fish out of water. And it's now February, you're almost at the Four Nations break. I'm kind of done being patient with this group, and again, I think my patience has lasted longer than most Predators fans, so I would just like to give myself some credit for that. But
Credit to that. Credit for you. Yes.
yes, but I am, and again, I'm not like get him out of here as soon as possible. It's nothing like that. I just think that I have come around to the idea of, all right, let's finish out this season, Barry Trotz, and then let's go back to the drawing board. And
When
that is where I'm at.
when you talk about system and fit, you know, we can't get too far in the jingweeds on the X's and O's of the system. But what is it that Andrew Brunette wants his players to do that they are not able to execute? That is like a system pillar, a main focus of what he wants. Clearly, we're not seeing it work, but what is the it? For people who are like, what specifically are you talking about?
Well, I think that, I mean, I don't think it's just one thing, but I think
Mhm.
that, the main pillars of the system are it's a lot of skating and it's a
Lot.
lot of offense. It's very fast paced. This is coming from a defense heavy John Hines system that he replaced. And so it's just very, very different. And I think that, again, this is way oversimplifying it, but it's kind of the idea that you hear of, the best defense is good offense is like, let's just score a ton of goals. And I'm not, again, that's really oversimplifying it. I'm not saying that Andrew Brunette's going out there and saying like, don't worry about defending guys, but I think it's just like, it's so fast paced and the guys look like they're chasing it. They look like they're
Mhm.
chasing the game. They don't look like they're in control at all. Um, Again, even on this recent 5-game win streak, which doesn't feel all that recent, but I mean they did have a 5-game win streak. even the wins were not convincing for me. Yes, they scored 7 goals against San Jose, but they also gave up 5 to San Jose. They were, even against good teams like Minnesota, Minnesota was too distracted by the whole Zach LaRue thing. And yes, it's good you take advantage of those things, but I think that, I just, to me, it's clear that, when you have to, it's kind of the idea of like sacrificing for the good of the many. And in this case, the many are going to be the players. There's more players than there is a system. And like, clearly the system does not work for multiple players. And I don't think it's anything about like, oh, the players are revolting or they're rebelling and not playing the system. It's not that. It's just like you get a guy like Steven Stamkos who looks like a lost puppy. You get Brady Shea who looks like he is playing hockey for the first time. It's rough. It's hard to watch. And I know, from watching these guys for years, that that's not who they are. And I don't mean to imply that Andrew Brunette is turning them into bad players, but I just think it's about putting the players you do have in the best position to succeed.
All right, Emma has laid out where she is at. Coming up, we're going to discuss and debate the pros and cons of Andrew Brunette losing his job as the head coach. I'm going to tell you where I agree with Emma and where I might need a little bit more time. Are you looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event? Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a lot of work, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how this works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all of the work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I have been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and let me tell you why I love it. The curated deals make it so simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. If you're looking for tickets for a Preds game, it's easy to find the best deal with Game Time Picks. They also have a seat view feature, and this is a game changer. Before I even hit buy on my tickets, I can see exactly what I'm buying and what my seat's going to look like in Bridgestone Arena. And the best part, you are covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they're going to refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Emma, I think that you have given voice to where I think a lot of people are, a lot of people with a measured response. There are some other people who maybe have not been as measured, but I think you laid it out very succinctly. And I think that you have a lot of great points. I've said this before and I will say it again. You parent the kids you have, not the kids you wish you had. Same thing with coaching. You coach the team you have, not the team you wish you had. And while there are remnants of a different system in the locker room that Andrew Brunette is trying to fit into a different style of play, they're still in your locker room. And as the head coach, you have to get the best out of every player. The red flags for me with Andrew Brunette are that we haven't seen this season him get the best out of veterans like Filip Forsberg, Steven Stamkos. There's a brief period where Filip Forsberg was Filip Forsberging, but consistency from the veterans has been a struggle. But you also haven't seen young players take steps forward, like Tommy Novak, like Luke Evangelista. And those were players that Nashville really needed to see movement on. So it's a red flag to me that you aren't seeing growth from different demographics in different phases who may require different things from a coach. And that's troubling. I also agree with you, and I think this is so important for you and I to talk about. Andrew Brunette has not lost the locker room. And I think that that is everybody's easy answer, because it is this catch-all, nebulous, gotcha kind of thing where you don't have to back that up with any sort of fact. It's just that, kind of, I don't know, it's very Twitter troll. Oh, he's lost the locker room. Well, back that up with fact. You can't, because the statistics, no matter what they are, don't have a thing to do with locker room vibes. As people who cover the team at practices, in the locker room, obviously these guys are professional athletes. Obviously they don't go out there and air their dirty laundry. But you get a sense in the locker room of buy-in and not, and frustration and not. And I agree with you, Emma. I just think that's a cop-out for why somebody would want to fire Andrew Brunette. I just don't think that is a measurable statement about a head coach.
Right. That's what I was getting at when I said, like, I don't think it's a culture problem. I don't think it's that he's lost the respect of the players. I don't think that he's too hard on them or too soft on them. I don't think it's anything like that. I think this is, from where I'm at right now, is that this is purely an X's and O's thing that is just not working.
Yeah.
With this group.
How do you, and I wrestle with this, like, this is a question I'm genuinely asking, because I go back and forth. How do you reconcile the success from last season and the disappointment of this season, and land at which is the real Andrew Brunette, the guy that can pull a team along and take a team that has no business being in the postseason into the postseason, and being, some people were thinking, okay, Nashville in the postseason could be something. Spoiler alert, they weren't. But, not just players had bought in, other NHL pundits had bought into, like, okay, Andrew Brunette's got them last season to this season, where I think unequivocally we can say it's a dumpster fire. Like, how do you which is the real Andrew Brunette?
Well, I think therein lies the problem, is that we don't know. And I think that, again, I'm like, yes, it's in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long. It's been 2 seasons. But I think, again, after last year, and like you said, what he did, and he dragged this team kicking and screaming into the fire. And, I think he earned a full season as a result of that. Now, the fact that we have seen 2 wildly different seasons, and we see, we hear Barry Trotz talk about it all the time, identity. Brunette talks about it too. But we don't have an identity for this team. And that is what's so concerning. And it's not like, well, it took them a while at the beginning, but they're coming along. No, like, they're really not that we can tell. And so I think it's that drastic difference that you're talking about. That in itself is problematic, because you have seen 2 ends of an extreme here. And I think that, talking about last year, yes, obviously the expectations were wildly different for this team. And, I'm sure that the heightened expectations certainly play a role for, because they're humans, right? It's human nature. When you, like, if the expectations are higher, you maybe get a little more nervous, and you're a little more like, oh, we have to live up to these super high expectations. You don't get to play as free and loose as maybe you otherwise would. Now, though, they have those high expectations, and I'm sure it does affect them, but the effect of that alone shouldn't cause a change this dramatically different. Like, I just think that, it's great. It's cool that you did that, and you got the most out of a team that had very little expectations to them. Like, that's, at the end of the day, I'm almost like, well, that's great, and that's a good story. But now you have a team of, with future Hall of Famers. and you can't get a damn thing out of them, that is more concerning than last season was promising, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. It's like, okay, at this point, it's more looking like last year was well, that's nice. Like, that's a nice
Mhm.
story, but it's not amounted to anything. And again, you need to be able to get the most out of your team when the expectations are high. And it's just not. And again, when I say get the most out of your team, I am not saying that Brunette has lost his team and that they don't respect him and they don't
Right.
want to play for him. It's
Right.
nothing like that. It is truly just, again, I am a proponent of let's exhaust all the options before we immediately choose the low-hanging fruit and yell fire the coach, which is what a lot of you people did.
We saw it. We heard you.
I do think that we are now getting to that point where damn near all the options have been exhausted. And I just don't know where else you go from here. And again, I'm not saying that objectively is a bad coach. It's just that his brand of, whatever the system is, it's not working here. And again, at the end of the day, if you're Barry Trotz, you have to look at it and say, okay, what do I value more? My coach and being right about the coach that I picked, or
Yeah.
swallowing your pride a little bit and taking the L and saying, hey, you know what? We tried it, didn't work. Now we have this roster that massively underperformed. And at the end of the day, it's going to be easier to move on from a coach than from an entire team, especially when a lot of that team has trade protection in there.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's just kind of where I'm at with it, is that like I really do feel I took the measured approach. I was like, yes, I really do think that we should not immediately start screaming, fire the coach. And I'm still not even screaming it. I'm not,
No, you're
I'm kind of
saying
like,
it very kindly.
thank you. I'm like, you know what, Barry, let's have a tough conversation when the season's over. I don't think he'd do anything about it now. He's already said he's not doing anything about it now, but I
Right.
think it's we got to maybe, take a hard look at what we've assembled here and maybe make some tough decisions.
Timing also does not work in Andrew Brunette's favor, in the sense that another season to figure this out means you are using up potentially another season of Roman Josi, of Steven Stamkos, of Ryan O'Reilly, of Filip Forsberg. At what may be, and I hate even talking about this, but this is how everybody thinks, before their great decline. Age is not a disease, but you do want to take advantage while you've got these guys hanging on to quote unquote their prime, or ready to continue to push for that. And timing is not on Andrew Brunette's side for another year of let's see what happens. Let's give it a third year to decide whether the first or second season was the fluke. Timing is not on his side.
Right. Like, this is not like, again, I feel like we keep picking on them and I really don't mean to, but like San Jose, very
Well,
different situation.
we love San Jose,
Me
just so
too.
everybody's clear. We love San Jose.
Again,
Go ahead.
the expectations of the San Jose Sharks were wildly different than the expectations of the Nashville Predators coming into this season. So this is honestly why, if you look at a team like Chicago, I was honestly surprised when they fired their coach
I
midway
was
through the
too.
season, because it was like, I mean, yeah, the team is underperforming, but they were kind of expected to. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Like,
but I that one is kind of an outlier for me. But I think, again, and it's the same thing with players too. Like, we talked about this with guys like a Cody Glass, for example.
mhm.
He was in a situation in Vegas originally where they were like, okay, look at the rest of our roster, we're ready to compete right now, and you don't help us do that right now, so this is not a situation for you. Like, we need to trade you. So they traded him to Nashville. And when he got to Nashville, it was okay. a little, we're a few years away. Like, let's, we can take our time, we can develop, we can ease into things. That's fine. And then suddenly, things change and they are not able to be as patient with him as they were before because of the changes on the roster. And I think that a similar thing can be said now for Andrew Brunette is like, hey, we tried it. We gave you some time. But the clock is ticking here with this roster that we have, and we want to maximize it. So you might end up being the casualty of that. And that's just, I think that's kind of how you have to look at it.
Coming up, we're going to hear from Andrew Brunette. He shared his thoughts on what he is learning this season. We also are going to address a really great question about Bruno, head coaches, and systems from one of our insiders. You just heard me mention our Locked On Predators insiders. We're going to be talking about a question from one of our insiders. I want to tell you a little bit more about this really amazing community. If you enjoy the Locked On Predators podcast, you have an opportunity to chat with Emma and I after we stop hitting record with our Locked On Predators insider program via subtext. We chat with our insiders before, during, and after games. We share breaking news with them, discuss and debate different things like, should the Nashville Predators fire head coach Andrew Brunette? And we are always talking about what is going on in Smashville. If you are interested in talking with Emma and I beyond the podcast, our insider community via subtext is a great way to do that. You can learn more by clicking the link in this video description or check out the link in our show's bio. All right, Emma, we are talking about Andrew Brunette at practice this week. Asked Andrew Brunette about what are you learning through this season? And I'm going to play a clip for you. There's a little bit of background noise because, again, it was at practice, but hopefully you'll be able to hear Andrew Brunette's thoughts on what he has been learning through this tough season.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a growth mindset, and learning a bunch of different things. Again, Monday morning quarterbacking probably everything, and I think that's what a coach does. He doesn't put his head down to his pillow without thinking about all the things he could have did or should have did or would have did differently. In saying all that, I think you have to trust your instincts and trust what you believe in, and I think I do, but I've learned a lot along the way.
There is something that I think is important, regardless of whether you are in the fire Brunette or give him another season camp. And that is this: I think everybody should agree that Andrew Brunette is working so hard to make this work. And I think that there are a lot of factors that have made the job this season so difficult. I think you have to factor in the reality that two of the big players on your team showed up in the locker room having planned to be somewhere else and kind of feeling rotten about the fact that they aren't there and how it went down. Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, both of them kind of got the shaft from their respective older teams. And yes, it's a business. And of course, everybody knows this is what happens, but it doesn't change the reality of how that feels. And so I think that there's an element to that. I think Andrew Brunette can't possibly be solely responsible for the number of posts that the Nashville Predators have hit, despite the fact that the opening of the goal is much larger a target than the posts that they hit consistently. Injuries outside of his control. But Andrew Brunette has never stopped trying to solve this problem. And I think that goes back to what you're saying. We are not saying that this is not a good head coach. We are saying that this may not fit, which leads into a question Lee, one of our insiders, asked. And I think that this is such a great question. Lee wanted to know what we were chatting about: systems and Andrew Brunette and success. And he said, how often do head coaches change their systems, or is that a part of their identity?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a black and white thing here where you just say like their system is their identity. But at the end of the day, it's like if you ask a coach to change his coaching system, it's like asking a player to completely change what they bring to the table. Like each coach has their own skills that they bring to the table. And yes, of course, as a coach, part of your job is getting the best out of the players that you have. But again, I think that if you ask him to completely change it, it's the blind leading the blind, and then no one's in a good situation. And so I think that with again, to me, it's more of a timing thing. I'm not saying that his system is bad or it doesn't work, but with the group that you have and the timeline that you have to work with, it just may not be it. It may not be the answer. And so I think that that's in this particular situation, asking Brunette to change his system is not going to be in the best interest of anyone involved, because you bring him in because of his system and because of what he brings to the table. So it's not really like, again, you tweak little parts of it here and there, but like the main pillars of it, no. And at the end of the day, it's kind of again, the time is running out here, and there's just like it's not really beneficial to be asking him to change, nor would it be a good thing, because you're asking him to do something that, that's not what you brought him here to do.
Right. And he talked about that in the clip. Like, you have to trust, as a coach, you do have to trust your gut. You have to believe in what you are asking for from your team. And Andrew Brunette has been upfront and said, look, we have simplified some things. This system, the minute details, the X's and O's of this system is challenging. We talked to players like Roman freaking Josi last season, was like, look, this is tough to learn. These are very smart hockey players, and they're saying, like, there is a lot of adjustment to doing what Andrew Brunette wants us to do. So it is challenging. He has said, look, we've simplified some things. It is still not working. I do think it is tough to expect Andrew Brunette to change that, because I remember when Barry Trotz introduced him, he talked about, like, this system is going to be exciting hockey, and we want to get fans excited. Man, has that not panned out. That is not panned out this season at all. Yeah. So I think it's tough to expect a coach to have a different system. I think when you have a coach that has been around a long time, they have seen what has and hasn't brought them success. Having said that, I am a huge proponent of, you have got to develop coaches in this league, because I'm so tired of the same recycled 6 or 7 guys. And I think that hockey progresses as a sport, and you need to have coaches that are willing to progress with the sport as well. But I do think there is something to be said for, it has to be a fit. It just has to be a fit. And if it's not, you've got to be able to have that frank conversation. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that too, like, I want to acknowledge that this is something that's probably difficult for Barry Trotz. It's not just about him admitting that he was maybe wrong about something. It's more about, like, he's a coach too. Like, he's a coach at heart. And he's got to empathize and sympathize with Andrew Brunette. And he's probably going to have a very long leash with coaches, like more than usual, because of his background. So that's why I say, like, I acknowledge that, and I know that can't be easy for him, but I hope that he can kind of take the step back and take the holistic view of what's happening here and what needs to be done.
Is he going to, Emma?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think, not to put on my tinfoil hat here, but when he said on the radio earlier this week about, of course, the question came up about, is Andrew Brunette going to get fired? And Barry said, as he should have, like, he has nothing to worry about before the end of the season. And so I'm like, oh, let's all get out our tinfoil hats and start conspiracy theorizing. Like, Andrew Brunette's getting fired the day the season ends. Like, I'm not, I think that I'm not trying to read too much into that, but I do think that he is at least open to, like, he understands that they, once the season is over, the tough conversations need to be had. Now, does that mean firing him? I don't know. I truly don't know that he's there yet. Because it also has to depend on who's available to replace him.
100%. This is not just you make a decision and that's the end of it, because
Mhm.
that may be 1A. 1B is just as important, if not more.
Mhm. So it depends on that. It depends on, how much outside pressure is he getting, what is ownership saying about it? Like, there's so many things at play here, and I think that, he I do trust that he recognizes that this is not working right now. Whatever this is, it's not working. And I do believe that he sees that. I just, yeah, I don't know if he does it. But I do think that if he doesn't do it this offseason, that Andrew Brunette is not going to last through the season next year if they get off to another slow start.
Yeah.
And I would think, as a coach, if I'm a former coach and I'm, and I now have a coach under me, I would think that it would be the kinder thing to do to cut ties during the off season and not mid season. At least give him a chance to find another job. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I hope that he is at least open to that as a possibility, like as an option. I don't need him to be there right now. Like, yep, all right, 70 some odd days till we can fire Bruno. Like, I don't think that he's there, but I'm like, I hope he at least acknowledges it as one of the options at the end of the season.
If Barry Trotz doesn't sit down at the end of this season and have absolutely everything on the table for an analysis, for an autopsy, and I mean everything on the table, that he's not doing his job as a general manager. And one of those big decisions has to be head coach. It has to be on the table for Barry Trotz, or he is not doing his job. I would also say I agree with you. If he opts to keep him, Andrew Brunette's seat will be so warm, he will not sit down, because he will be the coach on the hottest seat and the leash will be short.
Yep.
I don't know. We'll wait and see. Love to hear what you all have to say about this. Firing Andrew Brunette has been a hot topic all season. Where do you land? What do you think of what Emma has said? How do you feel like Barry Trotz is going to respond to this? We'd love to know. Share your thoughts in the comments. Of course, you can find the podcast on social media as well, LO_Predators. We'd love to hear from you there. Before we sign off, Emma, where can everyone find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for a rather spicy edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all new episode.